Everyone knows the story. A giant rock from space slams into Earth, a cloud of dust blocks the sun, and boom, the dinosaurs are gone. It's the simple, clean narrative we've all been taught since elementary school. But what if I told you that the actual end for these colossal beasts was far, far worse than a simple, quiet fade into darkness? The reality is a violent, chaotic, and unimaginably brutal series of events that unfolded in a matter of hours and days, not weeks or months. Get ready, because we're about to peel back the layers of a global catastrophe and reveal exactly how the dinosaurs died, and it's a hell of a lot more terrifying than you think. The commonly held belief is that the dinosaurs were simply killed by the global cooling that followed the impact, a slow, chilling winter that the cold-blooded reptiles couldn't survive. But that's just a tiny piece of the nightmare. The first moments were pure, unadulterated hell. Picture this: a 6-mile-wide asteroid traveling at 45,000 miles per hour hits the Yucatan Peninsula. The energy released was equivalent to 10 billion atomic bombs. Think about the mushroom clouds of Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Now multiply that by 10 billion. The first thing to die weren't those far away freezing in the dark, but the ones right on the doorstep of the impact zone. In the immediate vicinity, a shockwave of superheated air, traveling at thousands of miles per hour, instantly vaporized everything in its path. Trees, rocks, and any dinosaur within a 500-mile radius, from the massive T-Rex to the smallest Compsognathus, were incinerated in a blinding flash. Their bodies didn't have time to fall, they just ceased to exist, turning into a cloud of ash. We often imagine the Earth shaking in a big boom, but the true terror was this silent, instantaneous obliteration. The sheer scale of that blast is almost impossible to comprehend, dwarfing any nuclear weapon mankind has ever created. It wasn't a bang, it was the entire world's atmosphere being ripped apart. And this was just the beginning. The story of a long, cold winter that killed off the dinosaurs is a great simplification. The reality was a 1-2 punch of fire and water. After the initial flash, a massive fireball over 300 miles wide erupted from the crater. It shot superheated rock and debris, ejecta, miles into the atmosphere. The myth is that this was just a simple dust cloud. The reality is that as this molten material re-entered the atmosphere, it turned the sky into a hellish convection oven. Imagine millions of shooting stars all at once, raining down from above. This wasn't just heat, it was a global firestorm. The air temperature rose to hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit, igniting forests across the entire planet. Any dinosaur that survived the initial blast, or the shockwave, whether in North America, Asia, or South America, was now facing an inferno. If you were a Parasaurolophus hiding in a cave in what is now modern-day Montana, you were likely roasted alive. But if the heat wasn't enough, the ocean had its own revenge. The impact created a truly monstrous tsunami, a mile-high wall of water that slammed into coastlines around the globe. This was no Hollywood wave. It was an inland sea, traveling thousands of miles, scouring the land clean and drowning everything in its path. So while some dinosaurs were burning, others were being crushed and drowned by a wall of water the likes of which humanity has never witnessed. You might think the worst was over, but this is where the long, drawn-out suffering began. The global firestorm and the burning of countless forests sent trillions of tons of soot and dust into the upper atmosphere. The popular story says this just blocked the sun, but what if I told you it created something much more sinister? For months, maybe even a year, the sky was a permanent, impenetrable black. No sunlight meant no photosynthesis. Plants, the base of the entire food chain, began to die en masse. But here's the kicker. The asteroid also struck a massive sulfur deposit. This wasn't just a physical impact, it was a chemical catastrophe. The sulfur vaporized, mixed with water in the atmosphere, and began falling back down as highly concentrated sulfuric acid rain. This wasn't just a light shower, it was an acid downpour strong enough to dissolve rock. Can you imagine a stegosaurus already starving and freezing in the perpetual darkness, its skin being slowly eaten away by a continuous stream of acid from the sky? It wasn't a sudden death for these Cretaceous period giants, it was a slow, agonizing descent into hell. The food chain collapsed, not just from the lack of sunlight, but from the poison in the rain. After the fire and the acid came the cold. The dust and soot didn't just block out the sun, they caused a global temperature drop that plunged the world into an impact winter. This wasn't a gradual cool down, it was a precipitous drop of over 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The myth is that this was a slow, peaceful end. The reality was a worldwide famine and a relentless cold that was unprecedented in the dinosaur extinction. Carnivores like the velociraptor, their prey now starving, were forced into cannibalism, preying on their own kind and fighting over the last scraps. Herbivores like the mighty triceratops faced a world with no leaves, no grass, and no food source whatsoever. Their massive bodies, which required tons of food to sustain, became their biggest liability. They didn't just die, they wasted away, their giant frames becoming emaciated, their last days filled with gnawing hunger and a bone-chilling cold they were never built to withstand. It was a slow, miserable, and truly terrifying conclusion for the kings of the earth. So the next time you think about the dinosaurs, remember it wasn't a simple disappearance. It was a chaotic symphony of fire, acid, tsunamis, and a long and agonizing end from starvation and freezing. They didn't just go extinct, they were annihilated in a sequence of events so terrifying it's a miracle anything survived at all. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how fragile our own existence is and what would happen if the next rock from space decides to pay us a visit.